AMD's gaming graphics business looks like it's in terminal decline, is the headline of an article that I'm seeing posted all over the place. It's in my comment sections. I thought I'd take a look at this and see if there's anything to this. Give my overall thoughts on any points made here. I've seen some people in comment sections celebrating it, saying, I told you so, AMD's failing. First of all, I don't like that take because even if you're more of an NVIDIA fan, I don't think the idea of NVIDIA being alone in the gaming graphics card business would be good for anybody to have absolutely no competition other than themselves. So I don't think this would be anything to celebrate regardless of your feelings about either company. And again, I think I really hate the whole like Team Red and Team Green thing. I mean, the same thing as like back when I was a kid and it's like, do you have a Nintendo or do you have a Sega? You know, it's just like, anyway, I don't understand that whole mindset and kind of tribalism, but whatever. Let's look at this terminal decline and is there anything to this? So this is from PCGamer.com. I will link anything I talk about sources in the video description if you'd like to take a closer look at any of it yourself. Coming out with, I hate to say I told you so, back in October, I pondered, again, this is the article speaking, not me, I pondered whether AMD might give up on gaming graphics chips for PCs. Well, they haven't, so there's that. Anyway, now AMD has released its latest financial results, and things look more ugly. Okay, that's what I thought this would end up being based on. And yeah, so it looks like this is related to AMD's Q1 2024 earnings call transcript, which has been released, and I have read the entire thing, including the question and answer session at the bottom. And I will say that overall, AMD was saying that overall things are positive, other than their gaming division. However, their gaming division is comprised of two things. It's their console business as well as their Radeon graphics. So those are two separate things, although they are related and they're lumped into the gaming division. And the gaming division does look to be down now. It's absolutely down. And a huge part of that is consoles being down, which is an expected part of the console life cycle. And then the other thing is that, GPU sales are also down both, quarter to quarter. If you look at, the Q4 of 2023 versus Q1 of 2024, that makes sense because you're going from holiday sales to after holiday, so it would make sense that would decline. But also, if you look at it year on year, but keep in mind that year on year, what happened in Q1 of 2023? Well, that was shortly after the launch of the 7000 series of GPUs. So I would expect Q1 of 2023 to have better sales than Q1 of 2024, where I think their only new GPU launch was the 7900 GRE, which was really just expanding its availability worldwide when it had already been available elsewhere, and it was head up against NVIDIA's Super lineup, which would be a tough competition right there. For their sales, and again, a lot of people excited about the Super Series lineup. So anyway, that's kind of my take on what I got out of this earnings call. Is definitely that the numbers are down, but kind of expectedly so, I guess is how I would read it. Anyway, let's see what this article makes of it. So they're saying that AMD has released its latest financial results, and things only look more ugly. For the first quarter of 2024, AMD said that its gaming revenues were down a massive 48%. Now, keep in mind, gaming revenues is not the same thing as Radeon GPUs. It does include the console business as well. Compared to the same period in 2023, while some of that fall reflects the inevitable cyclical downturn in revenues from gaming consoles, put simply, the consoles have been out for a while and sales are beginning to flag. Yeah, that's pretty much what I got out of it, and I think what AMD said in the earnings call. AMD also conceded that lower AMD Radeon GPU sales were also to blame. So it's both things, lower AMD GPUs, Radeon GPU sales, as well as the console market being down. And then saying, what's more, even AMD says things will get worse before they have any chance of getting better, saying demand has been quite weak, and we actually think the second half will be lower than first half. That's basically how we're looking at this year for the gaming business. Now, careful here. Again, when they're saying that we expect second half will be lower than first half, they're talking about the gaming business, not necessarily referring to Radeon GPUs specifically. And remember, the consoles are a huge part of that gaming revenue, and consoles have been out for a long time. And Xbox, for example, has been having massive downturn. I think the article is even quoting it here, 31% down on Xbox sales. And then Sony also, hopefully the PS5 Pro will be some sort of a boost. But if you look at like PS4 Pro numbers versus regular PS4s, it wasn't a massive change. It didn't capture some huge part of the market or anything like that. So anyway, I think that all of this is not necessarily wrong, but I'm just not sure I'm getting terminal decline out of this. You have the expected downturn in console sales as the life cycle, heads into its, years into going into the fifth year as we're looking forward. And then you have, like I said, the beginning of the 7000 series launch would certainly sell more than I think you'd get towards the tail end of it. I think that kind of makes sense as well. And the other thing I'll say about this earnings call, there was absolutely no mention of we're gonna abandon Radeon GPUs. That was absolutely never stated anywhere in this. And in fact, if you actually scroll down to the end of the earnings call, I will say that their overall take on how AMD is doing was, in closing, we started the year strong. Now, again, they're not talking about Radeon. Radeon is down. Their gaming division is down. But they're saying in closing, they started the year strong. And also, if you look at the amount of actual money that the Radeon division, if you look at the percentage overall compared to the kind of dollar amounts that they're dealing with, it's it is not a massive amount of it. So, for example, they're saying operating income was up 266% year over year due to operating leverage, blah, blah, blah. Client segment revenue was $1.4 billion, up 85% year over year, driven primarily by Ryzen 8000 series processors. By the way, can I mention that Ryzen 8000 series processors, a big part of what's cool about those is the APU, the Radeon GPU technology in those processors. So, and that's up 85% year over year. So we'll mention that. Anyway, so they're talking about a lot of money here. They're saying gaming segment revenue was $922 million, down 48% year over year, and down 33% sequentially due to decrease in semi-customer and Radeon GPU sales. Gaming segment operation income was $151 million, or 16% of revenue, compared to $314 million, or 18% a year ago. So this is a chunk of their revenue, but it's not a massive chunk, and it's down to 16% of their overall revenue compared to 18% a year ago. But then if you're talking about their embedded segment, which is also down, that's putting up similar numbers. And again, nobody's having articles saying that AMD is going to abandon their embedded segment because it's down right now due to cycles of upgrading and things like that. Anyway, the point is that yes, there's a downturn right now. I think that's not completely unexpected, but there's no mention of we're going to abandon that. In fact, they're overall feeling strong about things, driven mostly by they seem really excited about the whole AI thing and their Instinct GPUs that are more on the AI side of enterprise solutions as opposed to consumer products. But you would also imagine that there could be some cross in the technology and research between those GPU divisions. I know they're not exactly the same thing, but I would imagine that it wouldn't just be complete savings to just abandon Radeon. If it at all relates to work they're doing in other parts of their business where it does seem to be helping. Again, their APUs on the Ryzen 8000 series processors, things like that. Anyway, let's see what else this article has to say. So they're talking again about Xbox, possibly the next Xbox not even being a traditional console, maybe being more niche, like a Steam Deck style thing. That's complete rumor at this point, not anything confirmed. But they're saying that that's hardly good news for AMD revenues, given that Xbox has been based pure on AMD hardware for multiple generations. Okay, I'm not so sure we can make this statement that that's hardly good news for AMD revenues, because one second. First of all, let's just say, and I don't think this is actually necessarily going to happen, but let's just say that Microsoft completely abandoned the traditional console market. Let's say they just shifted to a software only. They're just a game publisher or something like that. Would that actually be bad news for AMD revenues? Because I would assume that then Sony would just capture that market share, right? Wouldn't the people who would have bought the next Xbox, if there isn't going to be a traditional next Xbox, wouldn't those people just buy a PlayStation 6? Which, again, assuming AMD still gets that contract, doesn't that just shift money into who's giving the money to AMD from being Microsoft to being Sony? Rather than meaning AMD loses the revenue overall. At least that would be my take on the thing. I hardly personally would see somebody just stop being a gamer because Microsoft stopped making a console. I imagine you would just buy a different console. Maybe there's some really big Sony haters out there who wouldn't, but that would be my take on that. So I guess I'm not so sure about trying to, again, how does this tie into the terminal decline of Radeon? I'm just not sure that's there. Anyway, maybe Sony will do something spectacular with the upcoming PS5 Pro or PS6 to revitalize the console market, but it's hard to come to any other conclusion than a fairly pessimistic one regarding AMD's medium-term prospects in gaming graphics, be that on the PC or console. Okay, again, I would agree that medium-term prospects. Sorry, my kids are making a bunch of noise on this upstairs right now. I don't know if you guys can hear that. Something's rolling around on the wood floors directly above me, but you guys can deal with that. That's how we roll on the channel. Anyway, AMD's medium-term prospects. I agree, but there's a big difference between AMD's medium-term prospects and their graphics business being in terminal decline. There's a difference between being down in the short to medium term and just terminal decline, right? Those are very different things. Now they're getting to the rumors that AMD ditched plans for high-end members of its upcoming next-gen RDNA 4 GPU range, making sense because why bother with all the investment when nobody is going to buy the GPUs anyway, especially now that cryptocurrency miners can't be relied upon to buy them up. Okay, so let's talk about that for a second, because first of all, we're talking about leaks and rumors. We're not talking about official information. So what is the latest leaks and rumors? Again, being leaks and rumors. So could just all be totally made up crap that people post on the internet with no idea of what's actually happening, or it could be a perfectly great insider leak into what exactly is happening. But if we're talking leaks and rumors, here's what it is. The latest rumor is basically that RDNA 3 didn't meet its performance expectations, resulting in the big core frequency power curve going out of control. This includes, but is not limited to, conducting on-chip interconnect verification for the MI series and sharing R&D costs. The originally planned double 192 Infinity cache was also canceled due to cost and power consumption issues. RDNA 5 will be a clean sheet design similar to the Zen series. It might even get a name change, though it isn't certain yet. Hence, there's a need to widen the gap from RDNA 4 to thoroughly conduct case studies and R&D. RDNA 4 is merely a bug fix for RDNA 3, so its performance is still as expected, at best comparable to the 79 XT. However, there's still an improvement in ray tracing. So that's the current latest rumors, which again could end up all being nonsense. But notice that they're talking about not only RDNA 4 being a thing, but also RDNA 5, and RDNA 5 actually being a clean sheet design similar to when Zen was a total redesign. Which again, if this was true, doesn't speak to a terminal decline in Radeon GPUs. It speaks more to maybe them acknowledging that they need to do something different than they have been doing, which I think is true. Because at first, ray tracing and things like that weren't really that big of a deal in current games. They were the future. Well, we're heading into the future. RDNA 5 is the future. And I do think that ray tracing has a place in game design, becoming less time-consuming for developers. Ray tracing can definitely ease the burden on making good lighting and things like that, which is cool. And I think we'll start to see more of that, especially as we get into the next console generation. Maybe not at the tail end of this current console generation. So I think having a total redesign on that makes sense. So if, again, the latest rumors end up being true, it's that RDNA 5 could be another real big hit back and total redesign that could end up paying off. Who knows if it will? But that RDNA 4 is more of just a bit of an update on RDNA 3 to take advantage of some things that they could fix that didn't work out quite correctly on RDNA 3, but could still be an improvement in ray tracing along with that. But if they're not getting a massive redesign for RDNA 4, there's not going to be a real new high-end to compete with the high-end that NVIDIA would be bringing out with its 50 series, right? Anyway, so that's what I'm getting from these rumors. But they're saying, why bother with all the investment when nobody's going to buy the GPUs anyway? Again, if we're talking leaks and rumors, they're saying that there's shared R&D costs between the MI series. The MI series is what AMD is so positive about in this whole earnings call, is talking about how well their MI series is doing. So if there's any overlap in those R&D costs, then it would make sense to be doing both, right? But again, that we're talking more info from leaks and rumors rather than actual information, so I'd rather not base too much of it on that anyway. Okay, so now we're gonna get into the Steam hardware survey. So basically they're gonna be saying that Steam's hardware survey acknowledging it's not a perfect data set, but shows that NVIDIA cards being used by over 75% of gamers and AMD on about 15%. That's pretty stable, though. I wouldn't say that that's signs that, again, there's a terminal decline. I think if there was a terminal decline, we would be seeing signs that it's dipping, that AMD's losing it. If you look at the latest Steam hardware survey, if you look at the AMD little orange chunk here, and you look at it from November 2022 to April 2024. By the way, November 2022 would be right before we got the 7000 series from AMD. Looks like we were at 15.2% of the Steam hardware survey. And then you can see it drops 14.8, 15.3, 14.9, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We're at 15.8 on the latest one. So in other words, it seems to be very, very stable, bouncing between the mid-14s and mid-15s. Also keep in mind that the Steam hardware survey isn't a listing sales of current products. It's surveying what's in people's systems, and systems can be around for years and years and years. So a newer product doesn't necessarily make a massive impact initially on the Steam hardware survey. It takes a while to kind of get in there as older ones kind of fade out and things like that. But anyway, so it's not the same thing as current market share in like current sales. So of course that includes lots of older GPUs, so they do acknowledge that. In fact, you have to go to position 8 on the list of most popular GPUs on Steam to find one from AMD or NVIDIA's current generation. So they're acknowledging that NVIDIA's current generation also isn't making a big impact here. So in other words, if you click for more info, you get the list of all video cards by their current April not market share, but percentage of the Steam hardware survey. And yeah, you can see that it's older cards from the 16, 20, and 30 series, and even the 10 series, beating out anything from the 40 series. So NVIDIA's also not making a massive, the 40 series is also, again, still behind the older products in the Steam hardware survey, and that's a laptop GPU here. Got to go down past the 3050 and 1050 Ti to even get to the 4060, which is the first desktop 40 series GPU that's on the list. But yeah, you do go even farther before you get to anything from AMD, like their AMD Radeon graphics, which I'd assume is probably just some kind of generic like integrated GPU or something like that, most likely, followed by Intel integrated GPUs, then some more older NVIDIA GPUs. Got some more of those. You get the occasional 40 series card popping up in here. And then, the first like desktop AMD GPU we're seeing here is the RX 580. Then we get the RX 6600, the 6700 XT, AMD's 5700 XT, AMD's RX 570. We gotta go a while before we get to the 7000 series. Get some more 6000 series products. The 7900 XT is the first 7000 series card that shows up on the list. And guys, that is a pretty long ways down the list for sure. But anyway, it is above some of the 6000 series products like the 6800 XT and all of that. And anyway, so it is what it is. And let's see what the article makes of it. So they're saying that, yeah, you have to go very, very far down to see anything from the 7000 series. And they're using that as evidence that the 7000 series is kind of a failure. I mean, Yeah, I would actually agree that the 7000 series is not super exciting for the most part. And the 7900 XTX was interesting when it was a lot less money than the 4080. As the 4080 Super came out and brought that pricing down, then the 7900 XTX becomes less interesting. The 7600, I think, it's not better than a 4060, and it's not that much less money. 7600 XT, again, is more expensive, does give you more VRAM, but not really a big performance increase off of that. The 7700 XT is finally starting to see its price come down, but it launched way too expensive. The 7800 XT, I guess I would have probably been a little surprised I didn't see that one further up the list here. The 7800 XT was kind of interesting product, I believe. But yeah, a lot of the 7000 series wasn't super exciting. I wouldn't dispute that. But they're saying that it's hard to imagine it's anything other than a retail disaster when it's making pretty much zero impact on surveyed gamers on the biggest and most important PC gaming platform. Then there's kind of dismissing the 6000 series because while it was strong competition technically, they're saying it didn't really stack up in the Steam hardware survey either. It didn't really gain them market share. I mean, that can be kind of true, but in other words, okay, but they didn't scrap it, right? This whole thing's about, are they in terminal decline? There's a big difference between being in terminal decline and just not really competing, not taking market share from NVIDIA. They're certainly not taking market share from NVIDIA, but are they in terminal decline? That's the headline. So if that's the thesis, I'm not sure I'm seeing it here. Now they're getting into ray tracing being the biggest problem with the 7000 series, being that we didn't get a big ray tracing improvement. They're also mentioning DLSS being an issue and saying that NVIDIA's efforts in their AI GPUs is also paying off with the Tensor cores in their consumer gaming GPUs with DLSS upscaling. And AMD, then they're getting into the fact that AMD is trying to get into AI training and inferencing gaming itself with its Instinct MI300 chip, which AMD seemed extremely positive about in their earnings call, if we're talking about that earnings call. And they're saying that that's the main, if modest, cause for hope. Because if maybe they could get traction there, some of that technology pushes into its gaming GPUs. So again, they are acknowledging that there's potential positive stuff here, which again, I'm not quite sure how that ties into the terminal decline narrative. So maybe then it can invest properly in technologies like ray tracing, deliver an AI-based upscaling solution that is really competitive with NVIDIA's. I would agree that they really should get a better upscaling solution in there. They have announced at 3.1 for FSR, which they're claiming to have some big image quality improvements. It'll be interesting to see how that actually plays out. Of course, going by current estimates from both AMD and NVIDIA, NVIDIA will have at least 20 times more AI revenue. That's true. NVIDIA is making absolutely tons of money here. So if booming AI revenues and technology are going to help turn around AMD's fortunes in gaming graphics, it'll take years before we see any evidence of that. Ultimately, then, I'll stick to what I said last time around. RDNA 4 and the Radeon RX 8000 series, as it will presumably be known, will be limited in scope and something of a stopgap. Okay, that's not the same thing as a terminal decline. It'll be RDNA 5 in late 2025 or more likely 2026. That could be the last roll of the dice for AMD and its Radeon gaming graphics. If that's a flop, it's hard to see why AMD will keep investing in what AMD itself dismisses as a low-margin business, and so it could be adios for discrete Radeon GPUs on the PC. Okay, so if you come down to this final statement then, they're basically saying, so we'll have to see what happens with RDNA 5, and if it's a total flop, maybe AMD would give up on it, except that they didn't give up on Radeon graphics after their 7000 series was apparently a flop, at least according to this article. In other words, guys, I think this is clickbait. In other words, I think this article raises valid points about, yes, AMD's graphics business is not making a lot of money right now, and yes, the 7000 series does seem to be underperforming in the market, and the rumors are pointing to the 8000 series, if that is indeed what it called, not being a big major lineup to compete at the high end. So those things all seem to be true, but again, I have the issue with terminal decline, meaning that AMD has any intention to kill off the Radeon division. Again, if you look at their earnings call, there is absolutely no indication here that they're considering killing off the Radeon division. There is just acknowledgments that the gaming business is down right now. But they're making up for it in other segments, and products like the 8000 series Ryzen CPUs, which are APUs featuring Radeon technology, are one of the positive notes for their business here. So overall, it's clickbait, guys. So that's kind of what I make out of that. Now, I absolutely acknowledge that I think I really hope the rumors that RDNA 5 will be kind of an entire redesign and hopefully focus more heavily on things that I think will be big in the future. With the machine learning supported upscaling and ray tracing, I do think those things will be more and more important as time goes on. They're already important, but they're getting more and more important. So I think a total redesign could be really exciting if it pays off, and I think they do need to look into that. And I would like to see AMD even more, competitive than they are. But again, I don't see any signs that they're planning on killing off the business, which is what this article was claiming at the end here. But I'm just not seeing that. Although, I guess if a business never makes any money, eventually it might get killed off. But I think there's a lot of overlap between what they get out of the Radeon division and all of that. In R&D, and how that plays into their APUs on their Ryzen stuff, and like I said, their Instinct stuff and everything like that. So anyway, all right, interesting article. I think that the terminal decline headline is just grabbing a lot of attention, as it was probably intended to get clicks, and here I am talking about it. But I don't think we need to just assume that AMD is shutting down Radeon, as you might take if you just look at the headline. I do think that I'd like to see, what would I like to see from AMD moving forward? Like I said, I think it makes sense if their next generation product isn't a big step forward in upscaling and ray tracing and things like that. If they can't compete at the high end, then I think it does make sense to have it scaled back and compete in the low to mid range, where I think things like ray tracing are less of a big selling point anyway from a performance standpoint. So I think that makes sense. And then I think where they would really need to hit back is being a little more forward thinking on the those technologies. For the next generation. Again, current rumors are pointing to that being the case, but again, we don't know if that's actually true. In general, I just like to see AMD as price competitive as they could possibly be at the lower end, if they're not going to be as competitive in the high-end feature set at the higher end. So that's what I'd like to see from them. And like I said, for me, the biggest thing in the short term is getting out as big of improvement as they possibly can to their upscaler, because at least for me, that's where I see the biggest problem. But I don't think it's a terminal problem, at least at this point. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comment section. I hope, again, all of you have an excellent day. Links to everything will be in the video description.